The Flames were at practice, and we're heading there now. Brendan Parker joins us from FlamesTV, just back fresh off the road trip, getting ready to host the San Jose Sharks. Hey, VP, welcome to the program. I got to assume you were on that road trip. It looked like a lot of fun. How was it?
It was great. Yeah, we were a longer trip coming out of the break, but obviously the results were really good, and the stops were really nice too. So spread out, which is kind of rare, a 4-game road trip and not a single back-to-back in the mix there. So got a couple of extra days in Boston. Actually took in an extra hockey game. Got to see the Beanpot semifinal. Went and watched Boston College and Boston University on the first Monday night, and that was outstanding. Kind of a little bucket list hockey item checked off. And then they go 3-1 on the road trip. So all things considered, it was a pretty good 9-day trip.
Yeah, they're pretty excited in Flames land from what I can see. I just want your take on the last game. I watched it in New York, a 2-0 loss to the Rangers, where Shesterkin goes into the record books with his shutty there. I thought that was a hell of a hockey game. What was your read on it?
Yeah, you know what? Funny enough, I think it was probably the Flames' worst game of the trip, and yet, I thought it was a really competitive hockey game. I love the first period. I thought there was some edge to it. I thought it was physical. Uyghur threw a couple of checks. Obviously, Jacob Trouba right in the middle of it. But I think nowadays you kind of notice those games where there's a significant lift in the edge, where there's a couple of extra scrums, and I think in that first period alone there was 2. That involved every single person on the ice. Martin Pospisil right in the middle of it again, which you love to see, and he's been doing that since he's been recalled. I thought they played hard, played competitively, just couldn't find it. And, I thought they had some looks late to tie that game easily. I think of that Rasmus Anderson, shot that was labeled for the top corner. Shesterkin somehow gets a glove on it, and then Blake Coleman had a couple chances late stages of the third too. But Jacob Markstrom, he's just been absolutely sensational. There's no way you can leave that game without, thinking about everything that he did, probably more so in the first period, but throughout the course of that game. And, I think in the end, it's probably, rightly deserved Rangers win, but I thought the Flames competed the whole way through.
I just got to say this on the Rangers broadcast. They opened it with this, Sam Rosen and that gang. They're like, 1 year ago, this was the game of the year in the NHL. Remember the old school,
Yeah.
What was the Flames side of that? Because there was a lot of buildup from the New York side of that.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same way. I mean, it was even talked about when the Rangers were here in this building earlier in the year. And I think people forget that I think the Rangers and Flames played again after that game last season too. So there was kind of 2 games in between the 2 MSG games, but they've all been pretty good and pretty competitive. And I asked Nazem Kadri on the ice after the practice just before the game on Sunday. And he said, "Oh, I said, what do you remember about that game?" He's like, "I remember I got bodied. So I don't want to be in that position again," because he was right in the center of that. Well, basically the first hit. And then obviously there was Dylan Dubé in the mix and a couple of fights. And, Ryan Huska said in the morning that it was just one of the more entertaining, competitive games he's been on the bench for in his time in the NHL, head coach or assistant. And I think that kind of says a lot. It was memorable, and I don't think it quite lived up to that, but it really doesn't seem like those 2 teams play bad games. I mean, again, on Monday night, you had some absolute 10-bell saves. You had a couple of big hits.
Yeah.
You had some scrums. And at the end of the day, you have a 1-goal hockey game with an empty net. So I don't know, as a hockey fan, you're going to ask for much more from Madison Square Garden. It seems to always deliver.
Yeah, but a tough one. As you know, it snapped the winning streak, and that's no points coming out of that game. But now you're back home. You got San Jose coming in there next, and I will not ask you what the Flames are going to do leading up to the trade deadline, unless you want to tell me, Brendan. But what is the buzz around Calgary? Because I'm getting different mixed vibes from the fans. Right? They want to keep winning, getting into the playoffs.
Yeah.
What are you sensing?
I think that's fair. I think even just in conversations around this rink, around minor hockey rinks, because I do that too with my son, and you get some of those questions. I think there is kind of like a mix, because you watch the way they played on the 3 games prior to New York, and really even at MSG as well. But that 4-game road trip, and you see just how competitive this team is. They get some offense from some different spots. They've got goaltending, obviously, right there at the top of the National Hockey League. And then their blue line has been really good. It's been steady defensively, but they've gotten a lot of offense from it too. And so I would say mixed is really fair. But at the same time, you kind of have to look at the position you're in, and obviously contractual status is going to make some decisions for you potentially, and that's the stuff that I don't think you can ignore. We all know what happened with Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, and I think organizationally they want to make sure that they protect your assets. And if you can't get a long-term deal signed, then and you can benefit from a trade, I think you have to look at that. And they did a good job acquiring some really nice pieces for Elias Lindholm, and that really speaks to the contract status and where that was headed. And you have to think that they're going to explore all those options. And I think from a fan base, you have, much like all times, you have some people who want to see it torn right down. You've got some people who still want to be competitive. But I think the one thing that I've heard unequivocally is that they understand the position the team is in. And I think that kind of speaks more to those contract statuses and just sort of what's taken place over the last, couple of years here. And I think Craig Conroy has the trust of the Flames fan base. I think a couple of those trades have already helped support that. But I think this management group really does have the backing of the fan base, maybe, more so than any time that we've seen here, and trust what his decision making has been and will be, and are just kind of, I think more than anything, just sort of eager to see how this is all going to play out. And I think there's probably a sentiment among players as well that, I think they're probably ready for whatever's going to happen to just sort of happen. This is going to be a long wait until the trade deadline because of how much speculation, how many questions, and how many, different trade proposals have come out really since the season opened. Like, this isn't new. This has been going on since the start of training camp. I mean, Elias Lindholm, Noah Hannafin had those questions when they got back for the golf tournament in September. So, I think more so than anything, there's probably an element of like, whatever it's going to be, let's get to the end of this trade deadline so, we can all just sort of go forward.
You know what? Very well said. I got everything that you're getting across there. I hope the viewers did too. I'm sure they did. You're good at what you do. I won't keep you much longer, but I got to ask you this, because you brought up Craig Conroy. I feel like we're at a time where we should really appreciate what he says in interviews, because he's very honest and open. Like with this Lindholm trade, they're like, why was this so easy? He's like, I got what I wanted, so I hung up. I'm paraphrasing, but you know what? Why haggle?
Sure.
You're happy? Do the And I wonder if years down the line, he's going to be a little more tight-lipped, because he's just very honest, and I appreciate it.
It's a good question, and I'm sure there'll be the management style may change, or at least publicly, over time. But I mean, that's one thing that you just love, and I think that's why going back to the fan base and the support, I think that's part of it, right? I mean, you kind of have this feeling. Obviously, he was a beloved player, and his personality, he gives so much back to the community. He's, even as an assistant general manager for years, had tons of community events where he would be there and have these conversations with fans, and is always willing to engage. So I think from that perspective, he has the support just based on who he is as a person and how he comes across too. But now, with some savvy moves in his first year as a GM, I think he's also gaining some trust about what his vision is and what this management group's vision is for, how they want this team to look, not just post deadline, but in the years to come. And I think, that's the most important goal is to take a run at a Stanley Cup. And, I think he has a vision for it. The management group has a vision for it. And he hasn't said that publicly. I mean, he still, keeps that pretty close to the vest. But with things that have transpired, he has been pretty, forthright, pretty honest about, how they've gone about their business and what they're thinking to an extent that he's comfortable sharing. And, it translates well. I mean, even this has nothing to do with the trade deadline, but we're in Madison Square Garden. And, just to speak a little bit on who Craig Conroy is, we had this conversation about how he scored his first ever NHL goal at MSG, and he's walking us through it, and we're standing there at MSG, and there's a video actually up. We ended up shooting it afterwards, but he's describing the play, how he saw it, and Donald Brashear set him up as a member of the Montreal Canadiens. He gets his first NHL goal. He's just a really high energy guy, and easy to like, and I think he'll have the blessing of the Flames fans to do whatever he wants to do, and I think, to your point, that really comes through no matter what kind of interview he's doing.
Yeah, well, I hope it continues. It's been fun to follow, and I appreciate the time, Brendan. I know how busy you are. Thanks for this. Enjoy the day, and we'll be watching.
Thanks, RP. Good to talk to you, and hopefully we see you around here in Calgary soon.
Thank you, buddy. You will. Brendan Parker from FlamesTV, and Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I appreciate Clark lining it up because I was just dying to get a Flames perspective. And I'm going to be honest with you, that's a guy that works for the Flames, Flames TV, but it wasn't rah-rah, was it? It was very real.